that you are feeling energized and informed, that you had a nosh, that we are focused. There were so many experts, so many powerful insights on how to make an impact, how to use advertising and social media, and even the courts to fight hate. We also learned more about how to make our communities safer. This is very personal for all of us these days. My synagogue has been swatted more than once, for example, and synagogues and Jewish centers from coast to coast now have trained professional guards. Many of us have children on campuses where Jews have been vilified or ostracized simply for being Jewish. Suddenly, we have all been asked to reckon with how publicly outspoken we want to be. But these 2 days will remind us all that we are not alone. Today's sessions and many of the ones to come highlight the diversity all around us. Whether we face challenges as marginalized communities of many faiths, as Orthodox Jews, as women, as Jews of color, or as any part of the rich and varied parts of the Jewish tapestry in the United States, there are experts and allies and tactics here to learn from. I encourage you to take what you are learning home with you. We can all start by posting a photo. I know it's cheesy, but it's impactful, especially with all the photos that at least are coming in my stream. It'd be nice to post some of our own. And sharing some of the insights today with our friends who are not here, who are unable to attend. It's a strong and easy way to make sure that what happens at the Javits doesn't just stay at the Javits. I'd encourage you to take a moment after this session, of course, you don't have to peek at your phones right now, to share one photo, one quote, one impression using hashtag #NeverIsNow. Oh, I'm still talking. I had lunch too. Both Juju and I have kids on campus, and it is truly painful that we are at an inflection point at our universities where students need to think about how and if to be publicly Jewish. And you can speak now, Juju.
Well, thank you. It's true. Abby and I talk about this all the time. Just to be clear, my kids identify as 50% Korean and 100% Jewish. And we routinely talk about incidents as recently as yesterday on their campuses. And we know it personally, we know it through research. In fact, the ADL and Hillel found that 73% of Jewish college students have experienced or witnessed anti-Semitism, and less than half of Jewish students reported feeling physically safe on their campuses. And this plays out in so many different ways that I'm sure you've heard about. Do the students in your life feel safe to go to rallies about freeing the hostages, or to speak up in class when a professor or classmate says something hateful, or even to wear a Star of David on a necklace? I tried to start that conversation with my son and got slammed shut the door before I could finish my sentence. There are similar concerns coming up for Jewish high school students as well, and I can't keep myself from worrying, and I'm sure that this hits home for so many of the parents in this room right now who are friends of students, or in the case of many of our Never Is Now attendees this year, are actual students facing hostility in the classroom, on the quad, or even online. So it is also vital that we ready these Jewish students to engage with their young peers who perhaps have never had focused on Israel and the Middle East before now, and are developing opinions that may linger. So coming up next is a panel hosted by ADL's Senior Director of Government Relations, Advocacy and Community Engagement, Shira Goodman, who will host a conversation with Eden Weisberg, a founding member of the vocal and extremely effective Mothers Against College Anti-Semitism group. Also ADL's inaugural rabbinic fellow, David Wolpe, and Kaylee Werner. Yes, you may applaud. He's a rock star rabbi. And they'll be joined by Kaylee Werner, who is a junior at Indiana University and the chair of Anti-Semitism Prevention Task Force at IU. And they together are going to discuss how to navigate the landscape of anti-Semitism on campus. So please welcome to the stage Shira, Eden, Rabbi Wolpe, and Kaylee.
Thank you, Abby and Juju, for that kind introduction. As a parent of a college student myself, and through my work at ADL, I'm really excited about this conversation. And one thing I want to really dig into is how the audiences that our guests represent are interacting and hearing from each other, and whether what they're hearing matches and what we can learn from each other, and how the advocacy that they're doing together can make a real impact on our campuses. So let's dig right in. Kaylee, welcome. Thanks for being here in the middle of the semester. Can you talk about what it's been like for you on campus and highlight the big changes since October 7th?
Yeah, thank you, Shira. And there's nowhere I'd rather be for spring break, so. Anyways, campus has changed a lot, and I bet that any of you who've talked to college students would understand that. The big difference that we've seen at my campus, however, was that before October 7th, anti-Semitism was really easy to point out. It was people ripping mezuzahs off of door frames and burning them. It was people chalking swastikas around campus. Since October 7th, we've seen it turn completely to a type of anti-Semitism where students can't figure out whether it's them being uncomfortable or it's anti-Semitism. And it doesn't matter whether they're uncomfortable or it truly is anti-Semitism. It's important that they come, use our task force, reach out to people, get the support that they need, because even if it's just making them uncomfortable, we don't want any of that on our campus.
Eden. Thanks, Kaylee. And as you know, Kaylee, for some of you who have already visited our Activation Hub, Kaylee is featured in the Not on My Campus video. So thanks for using our hashtag. Eden, as a parent, as an educator, as somebody who is founder of a big online community of mothers and fathers and others who are concerned, what is the community and the parents you know, what are you most worried about? What are you most focused on right now?
Thank you, Shira. There are several different areas that we're focused on, both proactive and reactive. We're seeing a lot of parents with, we know that deadlines are coming now, children have to be making decisions for next year, and people are looking for which campus is safe, which campus is my child going to feel most comfortable at. And then we're also seeing a lot of parents saying, my child has experienced this, what should I do, who do I go to? Those are the two most prevalent questions right now.
So I'm going to let Rabbi Wolpe answer them, but I will tell you, and I'll remind folks that you may have seen Eden and Jonathan online highlighting our new Activation Hub, which is at notoleranceforantisemitism.adl.org. That's notoleranceforantisemitism.adl.org. It has resources for parents, students, and alumni to engage. We have a new section, which is, I know, something that you've asked about Israel Apartheid Week, and we'll talk about that. And we'll also talk about some other resources about how to make those decisions. But Rabbi Wolpe, what do you say to the parents that you're talking to?
The questions that I get most often, apart from, is my child safe at college? And the answer to that generally is my child physically safe? For the most part, yes. There are very rare instances where that's not so, but that has always been the case in almost any area, not only at college, where people gather. But in terms of, should we still be going to these colleges? And is there psychological safety? And can you learn in an atmosphere where you feel that you are part of a group that people detest, despise, disregard? That's a much tougher question. And my own answer at this point, which is subject to change, is I don't want to abandon all the traditional institutions of higher learning in America wholesale. I think institutions are really hard to build and they're very easy to destroy. So I don't say to a child, to a parent, you should never send your kid to Harvard or to Penn or to Columbia, but you have to be aware of what you will face, and you have to be sure that as a student, you're prepared to face that in one way or another. And the only other thing that I would say is it is also time for the Jewish community to start thinking about giving their resources and their time and their children to colleges that want them and that will court them. And so I would say, I mean, I could name a couple of colleges here, but I don't want to name this college and not that one. But there are colleges that are actively trying to recruit Jews, and we should not only go there, but also it's time for us to consider, as is happening, creating new institutions, because, as you know, a lot of what made these colleges great I'm not ashamed to say this, was the Jewish community and the Jewish presence. And we can make other colleges great too.
Thank you. So let's get into it. Kaylee, you are uniquely positioned to not talk about your own experience, but you have a younger twin brother and sister who are seniors in high school right now.
Yeah.
So would you change anything about your process if you were, as you're advising them, for what to look for?
Yeah, well, I can tell you exactly what I've told them, and that's go to Hillel, go to Chabad, ask the people the questions that you have, but don't be scared to go to college. Because college now is, in my opinion, still incredibly safe for Jewish students. 99% of the time being Jewish on campus is awesome, and I love wearing a necklace that shares my identity with everyone, and I love going to basketball games where one of our woman basketball players is an Israeli and everyone's waving Israeli flags and cheering in Hebrew. And for most people on most campuses, that's what they see. And unless you're actively getting involved in these hard conversations and fighting this fight every day, like I encourage students to do, you can get away with not seeing most of it on campus. And so I don't want students to feel discouraged from going to school, and I don't want them to feel discouraged going to their dream school because of what they're seeing.
So Eden, is that surprising for you from what you're hearing from your community?
It's somewhat surprising. I think that from a parent's perspective, and this is something that when parents come to us, we actually reflect back on them. What we see as parents and Jewish moms, we want to step in front and protect our children. But what we experience may not be what they're experiencing on campus. So it is a little bit surprising in a very positive way. And I think that it speaks to addressing some of the parental fears and really trusting our children to let them lead. If we remember back when we were in college, most of us didn't have our moms fighting our battles for us. And, our recommendation is, as much as we want to step in front, I mean, you look at Kaylee and she doesn't need her mom in front of her. So.
But I'm lucky to have her.
Yeah. And your bubby.
And my bubby.
Right? So 2 resources that we'll just preview. We are about to put up on the Activation Hub a resource for the questions to ask and where to get the information about college climate, about college policies. And also some of you may have heard that ADL will be releasing in April the first ever kind of report card to gauge what is happening on college campuses and how colleges are responding. So please stay tuned for that. And Rabbi Wolpe, you're being asked, you're on a lot of campuses, right? Yes. You're advising people on and off. What is your advice to do exactly what you said to make sure these campuses want our students there?
First of all, there is an enormous failure of leadership on college campuses. And I want to explain where, sure, you can applaud a lack of leadership, go right ahead. But no, I understood. But I want to explain to you part of the reason that that's so out of my experience as a synagogue rabbi. You hire synagogue rabbis, there are like 5 or 6 major personality traits. You hire synagogue rabbis for likability. If they don't have likability, you don't want them to be your rabbi, and then you ask them to take stands that are unlikable. It's true, and every rabbi faces this. You say, Rabbi, we like you so much, but you shouldn't say this. And if you do, then don't like you so much. And so it's a real conflict in personality. Most college presidents reach the presidency for the same reason. People like them. And they don't then want to risk all that likability by taking stands that will make students and faculty and parents dislike them. What they haven't realized until this point is they manage that by inaction as opposed to managing it by action. But realize that leading a college campus right now is really difficult, and we're asking people to make hard choices, and they have to do it, but we should at least know that to say we're going to kick these kids off of campus because of what they're doing is not easy for any college president. So we have to basically keep the pressure on and let them know that it just won't fly to ignore what is happening on campuses, which is exactly what has been happening. If I can take one more second, the reason that I left the Harvard Anti-Semitism Committee and the reason that other people, I won't speak for them, have had similar reactions is not because there wasn't some willingness at Harvard to they don't want anti-Semitism there either, but they and other places don't want to do the very difficult and decisive things that are required, because one of the major emotional components of life that we're lacking in a lot of leadership positions is courage.
So Eden, what do parents need to hear from their students? What do you need to hear from people like Rabbi Wolpe? What resources do you need for parents to maybe take a deep breath, to realize the kids are all right, and to guide your students?
I think that parents need to hear what's real from their kids. Parents don't want to feel like their students or their children are sheltering them. We want you to tell us what's going on. And tell it all so parents know. If you're sharing that, most of the time you can go to a game and people are wearing Israeli flags, and parents hear that, that's very comforting. What Rabbi Wolpe said is, very much what we see. It's a lack of courage, and to have leaders speak out like you do is again comforting to parents. And I will say that the tools, I know when I sat down with Jonathan and he started showing the report cards so people have the accuracy of what is going on campus, and I know it's data-driven, subjective, and objective. As an educator, that really appealed to me. And also your resources about Apartheid Week and what kids are currently experiencing and will be looking at. So both the students' input and the leadership and the tools that we get are really what parents need.
Great. Kaylee, what do you want parents to know? What do you need from them?
Yeah, that's a big question, because we do get a lot of parents that ask the task force that exactly. And the truth is, there's a lot that we need that I can't sum it up by just telling you. But the biggest overwhelming thing is we need people to tell us what support they can provide for us. If you have funding, or you have a speaker, or you have this type of resource, no matter what it is, you tell us and we'll put it on our list. And the second we need you, the second you can be of support to us, you'll be our first call. We've seen that over and over again, and the success that's had just by being able to take everything that we have and figure out when we need it and when we're going to target certain things. And so I think for all parents to reach out to their local Hillel or Chabad or whatever organization is taking place on that campus that's really standing up for this movement, and just saying, we're here to support the kids with this, and we'll know to come to you as soon as we need it.
Rabbi Wolpe, advice for both audiences, parents, students?
So I have two pieces of advice. One is that it's much more helpful in general for people who are in trouble to offer them something than to say, what can I do? What can I do puts the burden on the other person. Saying, can I do this, is much better. And then the other thing, which we had talked about before, is a couple of weeks ago I was at the BBYO convention with all these teens. And someone said to me, what gives you hope? And I wanted to say, all these teens. But I was the third one on the panel, so someone already said that, and I had to come up with something else other than all these teens. And I all of a sudden literally had flashed in my mind a conversation that I could have with my great-great-great-great-grandfather. And I could just imagine saying to him, you know what? We Jews are having a terrible time at Harvard. And he would say, there are Jews at Harvard? And I would say, yes, but they're really attacking Israel. And he would say, there's an Israel? And I would say, yeah, but right now the support of America for Israel is a little bit less than it was. He would say, and America supports it? And if you think about that, as much as we talk about the situation that we are in, our ancestors would look at us and think we are the luckiest Jewish community that has ever existed since the beginning of time. And then I'm sure that my great-great-great-great-grandfather would say, so use your voice and your resources to make sure that your grandchildren will be able to say the same thing.
Okay. So in our last minute or so, Eden and then Kaylee, what gives you hope? And I'm going to give a little call to action. So Eden, you first.
What gives me hope as a parent, and I will share, my eldest is about to go to grad school, and I'm in the same boat as so many of these parents, trying to figure out where I'm comfortable with him going, and the reality being he's an adult, he's making his own decisions. But what gives me hope is students like Haley, and we're seeing it across the country. We're seeing young people stand up and speak articulately and bravely and proudly. And the first time I connected with Haley, I was like, okay, I'm gonna stop worrying about my little ones because they've got it. And that's what gives me hope.
Haley?
I'll keep it quick, but the one big thing that gives me so much hope is seeing everybody expressing their Jewish pride all over campus still. There's no need to, there can be a need to hide it over sometimes, but for the most part, being able to express our Judaism, to wear our Hebrew names around our neck, and to sing Hebrew songs, and be able to share an outside Shabbat where anybody can drive by and see it, that's what gives me hope.
So 2 things you all can do before you leave. If you go into your Never Is Now app during the break, there is a tab that says surveys, and there's a 2-part survey about campus climate and what's important to you in improving it. So we'd love for you to take it. And then please visit the Activation, the Advocacy Center. You can visit the new hub, notoleranceforantisemitism.adl.org, to see all these resources. Thank you, Kaylee, Rabbi Wolpe, and Eden.
Thank you. Thank you.
As we just heard, Jewish students are experiencing literally one of the most urgent challenges we face today. So I want to thank my friend Rabbi David Wolpe, Eden, and all of our friends at Mothers Against Campus Anti-Semitism, and Kaylee for joining us to share more about the work they're doing every day in their communities, offline and online, to address these challenges. So let's thank them one more time. They also highlighted through their testimony why ADL has doubled down on our work on campus in recent years, particularly after 10/7. We've tracked more than 500 anti-Semitic incidents in just the first 3 months after the massacre. That's a 900% plus increase over the prior year for that same period of time. Just imagine if any other community in our country had an increase of 900% year over year, harassment and vandalism and violence. But that's what we're facing, along with these crazy lights. But you know, it takes a village to make life on campus safe for Jewish students and for all students. That's why ADL has established partnerships with leading campus organizations like Hillel International, AEPI, Jewish on Campus, Olami, AEFI, the Jewish Agency, and other representatives. And we've got folks from these organizations who are here with us this week, both in our main conference and part of the campus track. But I'm pleased to welcome today Rabbi Avi Weinstein, president of Chabad on Campus International, up to the stage, because we are also joined today by dozens of Chabad on Campus shluchim, or emissaries, and more than 100 students involved with them. And they're here today because, and I got to tell you, I've been waiting several years to share this news. It's taken a ton of work, but together we are proud to announce that ADL and Chabad on Campus International are partnering and launching a joint initiative to create safer environments for Jewish students at universities and colleges across the country. Thank you, Rabbi Weinstein.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Good afternoon, friends. And to all the college students in the room, I want to say one thing to you. We love you. We love all of you. And it's really an honor to be here at the start of this new collaboration between Chabad on Campus International and the ADL. As you all know, over the last few months, our students on campus have faced unprecedented anti-Semitism. But we have noticed another remarkable change. Our Chabad houses are flooded with students yearning to connect. This is a testament to the power of the indomitable Jewish spirit, which only gets stronger in the face of challenge. We saw this in the wake of October 7th, where Am Yisrael and our friends united to defeat a vicious enemy. We see this every day with our dear soldiers who are bravely risking their lives to defend the people of Israel, whose heart isn't warmed by seeing our soldiers singing and dancing on their way into battle with the words Am Yisrael Chai on their lips. And we see this in our students, who in a hostile environment stand strong and proud of who they are, unwavering in their commitment to Judaism, to Israel, to the Jewish people, and to the betterment of humankind. The Lubavitcher Rebbe teaches that the Jewish people are like an olive. When compressed, the finest oil is extracted. This oil refers to the inner resolve of the Jewish soul that emerges in times of challenge. We have witnessed this firsthand on campus, and we couldn't be prouder to support our amazing students. For every hostile protest on campus, there's a Chabad house with a warm, delicious, homemade Shabbat meal ready. For every anti-Semitic slur, we respond with joyous prayer and song and love. And for every poster that's ripped down, we will respond with hundreds more. Working together with the ADL will allow us to provide new resources that empower and protect students. We are extremely grateful to the ADL for working together to fight darkness with light and to keep the Jewish spirit strong on campus. Together, Chabad on Campus and the ADL will protect students' rights to live freely and safely, inspiring them to be proud advocates while fulfilling our important mission of elevating this world and making it a kinder place, a better place, and a holier place. Am Yisrael Chai. Thank you.
Next, we're so proud to be joined by another hero of mine, Dara Horn. Yes. The award-winning author of the book People Love Dead Jews, which was Dara's third book to be honored with a National Jewish Book Award. Her influential essay in The Atlantic, she's had many, but if you haven't read the February 15th, you have to rush and do that after the conference. Required reading. It's called Why the Most Educated People in America Fall for Anti-Semitic Lies. And it eloquently skewers the train wreck that was the congressional hearing featuring the presidents of Harvard, Penn, and MIT, discussing how they would respond to calls for the genocide of Jews. As Horn said in her piece, the fallout from the hearings brought down 2 of those university presidents and spawned 1,000 op-eds about diversity, free speech, and criticism of Israel that have extravagantly missed the point. Dara is, again, a voice that I turn to when I am feeling at sea, and it's such an honor to welcome her to this stage now.
I'm really honored to be with all of you this afternoon, and especially honored to be following my dear friend, Rabbi David Wolpe, with whom I share the dubious distinction of having served on Harvard's Anti-Semitism Advisory Committee. Harvard did not take our advice. So I'm especially honored that all of you actually want to listen to what we have to say. So thank you for being here today. While we were on that committee at Harvard, Rabbi Wolpe and I discovered that the problem at Harvard and elsewhere is not that Jewish students don't want to hear criticism of Israel. Instead, Jewish students don't want people vandalizing their dorm rooms or urinating on the Hillel building. They don't want people tearing down their mezuzahs or throwing eggs at their fraternity house. They don't want their professors spouting anti-Semitic lies. They don't want to be kicked out of class for being Israeli. They don't want people punching them in the face or beating them with a flagpole or threatening them with death for being Jewish. At world-class American universities, all of this has happened and more. As you heard, I recently wrote an article for The Atlantic about all of this, as I put it, this train wreck. And I will tell you that as disturbing as it was to hear Jewish students' horror stories, what was actually more disturbing was to go back to those Jewish students with the magazine's fact checkers and to discover just how terrified they were of going public, even anonymously. And they were right to be terrified because there are real consequences. But today I want to talk about the consequences of not speaking out, about what we are all up against and what we are called upon to do in this moment. The through line of anti-Semitism for thousands of years has been the denial of truth and the promotion of lies. These lies range in scope from conspiracy theories to Holocaust denial to the blood libel to the currently popular claims that Zionism is racism, that Jews are settler colonialists, and that Jewish civilization is somehow magically not indigenous to the land of Israel. These lies are all part of the foundational big lie. And that foundational big lie is that anti-Semitism itself is a righteous act of resistance against evil because Jews are collectively evil and have no right to exist. This story that we are all trapped in, this doom scrolling through horror, it is very, very old. But what is new is that all of you are here. You are all brave enough not to hide. You all reject this delusional nightmare. And those of you from beyond the Jewish community are standing beside us to say that you reject the world's oldest form of hatred and that you stand with the Jewish people. In this moment, I want to be clear with all of you that that is who we are, the Jewish people. When I speak on college campuses, I am often asked, are Jews a religion? Are Jews a race? Are Jews a nationality? And the answer is that Jews predate all of those categories. Jews predate the modern concept of race. Jews predate the modern concept of nationality. Jews predate the concept of religion. Every non-Jewish society has tried to fit Jews into whatever identity boxes it knows best, but Jews predate the box. Jews are actually a type of group that was common in the ancient Near East and very uncommon in the West today. A joinable tribal group with a shared history, homeland, and culture. What I just said was like a paragraph in English, but in Hebrew, it is one word that's 2 letters long, Am. We are Am Yisrael, the people of Israel. The hatred that we are facing right now is very, very old, and its consistent through line is denial. This is the denial of our reality in order to destroy us. People have been trying this for thousands of years, and it has yet to succeed. I'm Dara Horn, author of a book called People Love Dead Jews, and I still cannot believe that my publisher let me keep that title. It's actually even worse than that. I also have a spin-off podcast called Adventures with Dead Jews. And the production team and I were always joking about how we wanted to make merch. Like coffee mugs, tote bags, beach towels. As my sister Jordana, who's here with us today, pointed out, no one's gonna take your seat at the pool if you have a People Love Dead Jews beach towel. If this title makes you uncomfortable, what's inside the book is gonna make you a lot more uncomfortable. One thing that I have learned in my 20 years as a writer is that the uncomfortable moments are often where the story is. My goal is to make you uncomfortable. Today I want to guide you through some of that discomfort, which I am confident that every person in this room has been feeling, and show you how facing that uncomfortable reality can empower all of us. People Love Dead Jews is a book about the role that dead Jews play in a non-Jewish society. The premise is that non-Jewish societies often only respect Jews when Jews are powerless, whether that means politically impotent or dead. In the book, I talk about two different types of anti-Semitism that have plagued the Jews throughout history, and I name them after the Jewish holidays that celebrate triumphs over them, Purim and Hanukkah. Purim, which of course we'll be celebrating soon, is based on the biblical book of Esther, and it is the straightforward story of anti-Semitism. There's a big bad guy who wants to kill all the Jews. But in the Hanukkah story, no one ever says, let's kill all the Jews. Doesn't come up. The goal is still to destroy Jewish civilization, but the way to do that is by making Jews not be Jewish. The Hanukkah story is about a Hellenistic empire that takes over ancient Judea. And at first it's a soft persuasion, where this empire says, we have this awesome Greek culture that's way better than your pathetic Jewish culture. And at first the Jews go along with this. And one thing they do is they build a gymnasium in Jerusalem for the Greek games. They then had to recruit teenage Jewish boys to participate in these games. Now, if you have ever been to an art museum, perhaps you remember that Greek athletics were played in the nude. These teenage Jewish boys then had their circumcisions reversed so they could participate in these Greek games. I don't even want to know how that's possible medically. But what's interesting here is that no one at that point in the history is making them do this. That was simply what you needed to do to be a person who mattered in that society. And it was only 5 years later that the regime outlawed circumcision. So that's a really, really graphic example of Jewish self-erasure, but I'm gonna give you an example that's a little closer to home. Last summer, I was talking to a group of Jewish teenagers who had been on a teen tour in Israel. And a teenager from that group told me about the other Jewish kids who were on this tour with her. She told me, these are kids who don't eat breakfast without posting it on TikTok. But we're on a 6-week trip to Israel, and they are not posting that they're in Israel. I'm going to give you another historical example of this self-erasure that's going to also feel familiar. In 1918, in what later became what was in the process of becoming the Soviet Union, the Bolsheviks were waging civil war in what was the former Russian Empire, and they want the 2 million Jews who live there to be on their side in the civil war. So they created what were called the Yevsektia. These were the Jewish sections of the Communist Party. And the purpose of these Yevsektia were to spread Marxist propaganda among the Jewish masses. And their slogan in 1918 was, "We are not anti-Semitic, we are just anti-Zionist." Did you notice that this is in 1918, 30 years before the creation of the State of Israel? It's probably not about Netanyahu. So we're not anti-Semitic, we're just anti-Zionist. Oh, and by the way, we're Marxists, so we're also anti-religious. So we love Jews, you just can't practice Judaism, support Zionism, or study Hebrew, but we love you. We love Jews. And in the process of not being anti-Semitic and just being anti-Zionist, of course, the Soviet Union managed to persecute, imprison, torture, and murder tens of thousands of Jews. And then later, they exported these slogans to their client states in the developing world, and later to progressive circles in the United States, which is how it happened that 3 weeks ago, anti-Semitic cartoons directly from KGB propaganda were posted on Instagram by faculty at Harvard. All of this is just this broader idea of the broader non-Jewish society editing how Jews are allowed to be Jewish by forcing Jews to fit into a box and to be just like everyone else or else. I think this dynamic exposes a massive flaw in the way we think about diversity. Often when we teach people not to be bigoted, we encourage them to see minority groups as though those minority groups are just like everybody else. And this is like, you shouldn't hate this group of people because they're just like you and me. They're just like everybody else. The problem is that Jews spent 3,000 years not being like everybody else. Uncoolness is Judaism's brand. And this goes back to the ancient Near East, when everyone else was worshiping a Marvel Cinematic Universe of sexy deities, and the Jews are like the losers in the school cafeteria, sitting in the corner with their bossy and unsexy invisible god. Jews have never been cool. And that requirement that Jews have to be just like everybody else in order to not be hated is the fatal flaw that exposes the limits of a society's diversity. Since I published this book, I have been inundated with Jewish readers telling me their private horror stories, their experiences with anti-Semitism. Usually these readers write something that says, "I never told anyone this before, but if you're that person, tell someone, report it to the ADL, thank you." So they're sharing these stories with me. They say, "I never told anyone this before, but," then they say, "Thanks for writing your book." And then sometimes they say, "Can you help?" My other sister, Ariel, when I shared this with her, told me, "Dara, you've become the anti-Semitism Lorax." And the problem is I'm about as effective as the Lorax was. But there's been another surprise for me from in terms of responses to my book, which is the responses I have gotten from non-Jewish readers. I have discovered that there are a whole lot of people with a whole lot of goodwill, people who want to be, in today's language, good allies, and really just don't know how. I have even heard from readers who have said to me, "I'm a recovering anti-Semite." My non-Jewish readers keep asking me, "How can I help?" This is an opportunity. This was my first nonfiction book that I ever wrote after publishing 5 novels before that. And I was very dumb because I didn't realize that when you write a nonfiction book describing a problem, people expect you to solve the problem at the end of the book. My readers now of all different backgrounds have all asked me, "So what's your solution to this problem?" To which my completely tasteless reply is, did you really want me to give you the final solution to the Jewish question? Because I am really not prepared to give that to you. But I have now been asked this question over and over, including by the White House Task Force to Combat Anti-Semitism. And I now have realized just how much opportunity we have. My major recommendation to the White House Task Force on Combating Anti-Semitism was that Americans need to learn who Jews are, to learn the content of Jewish civilization instead of erasing Jewish life. There is no way to unlearn anti-Semitism with its denial of Jewish identity and reality. There is no way to debunk these lies without actually investing in teaching people the truth. I think that everyone, whether they are Jewish or not, needs a basic Jewish education. It is essential to teach this to everyone, not only to enhance the Jewish future, but to enhance the American future. And I'm going to give you one example that illustrates this. The foundation of Jewish civilization is Torah, the idea of monotheism, the belief in one God, and the resistance to idolatry. Now, I know half of you just tuned out completely because you think I'm talking about what our neighbors call religion. But remember, Jews predate the concept of religion. What I am calling Torah is a radical idea about freedom and responsibility that applies to all of us. I want you to consider closely for one moment the idea of resistance to idolatry. Today we think idolatry means praying to a statue. That's not what idolatry is or ever was. In the ancient Near East, societies had many gods, and one of those gods was the dictator. In ancient Egypt, the pharaoh was one of the gods. So when the Jews said that they do not bow to idols, what they actually meant was that they do not bow to tyrants. People have often wondered how the Jews have survived for so many thousands of years, and one answer is the refusal to bow to tyrants. This moment that we are in is going to require us to stop bowing down before whatever is popular, and to tell the truth to ourselves and to everyone else about who we are and about who we always have been, which is Am Yisrael. We are going to have to educate our friends and neighbors instead of being trapped in the boxes they have put us in. We are going to have to explain to them that you cannot put anti-Semitism in the cute little religious bigotry box. That box is not big enough for the lies that Jews are facing down today. You cannot erase Jews from history classes and diversity trainings and then claim that you care about fighting anti-Semitism. You cannot say that you are not anti-Semitic because you only want to eliminate half the world's Jews. The non-Jewish world does not get to decide how Jews are allowed to exist. That is the tyranny of the majority. That is the tyranny of the majority, and Jews do not bow to tyrants. When so many people around us are lying about who we are and who we have always been, telling the truth is going to require courage. At one college where I spoke recently, a Jewish student told me how one of her classmates was making anti-Semitic comments in class. This Jewish student told me that she decided not to say anything because she knew that if she did say something, she would wind up ostracized on campus, or canceled, or doxxed online. She was absolutely right. But then she told me, I wish I had said something. I wish I had said something. by not saying anything, she ceded that room to people who hate her. She gave up one more place where she is allowed to exist as a Jew. It's true that if she had spoken up, she would have had to live with the consequences for the rest of her college career. But while those people would have been in her life for a few more months or a few more years, the person that she is going to have to spend the rest of her life with is herself. And now she will never know how many people were actually on her side. I know this fear. Even though I am personally the anti-Semitism Lorax, every time I write about this, I am still absolutely terrified. But I've also discovered a secret, which is the astonishing empowerment that comes from saying what everyone else is afraid to say. In that moment when you finally choose truth and freedom and courage, you don't just discover your own strength. You also discover the thousands of grateful people who, it turns out, were all waiting for you to say it, who are all waiting for you to lead them. I spoke earlier about Hanukkah anti-Semitism, but in a few weeks we're going to be celebrating Purim. And the Purim story now feels in many ways eerily familiar. Like many American Jews today, the Jews of the ancient Persian Empire were blessed with prosperity, status, and power. One of them changed her name to something less Jewish sounding and then became the empire's queen. But when the Persian Empire announced a decree calling for the genocide of Jews, the story tells us that the Jews of Persia were just confused, confounded. They were probably asking themselves, the way so many of us are asking ourselves today, what the hell is happening here? Those people can't possibly mean what they're saying, right? Sure, it sounds bad to call for the genocide of Jews, but maybe it depends on the context. But Queen Esther had a cousin named Mordecai who didn't want to wait for the context. He was a person who didn't like to bow to tyrants. Mordecai told Esther that she had to go to the king to defend her people. And at first in this story, Queen Esther is like that college student who's afraid to say anything. And rightly so. If she goes to the king without being invited, she could be killed. And maybe even canceled and doxxed. But Mordecai tells her, perhaps this is the reason that you have become queen, so you can use your power in this moment. Queen Esther gathers her courage, goes to the king, and to her surprise, the king is on her side. She only needed to rise to the occasion. We American Jews have reached our Queen Esther moment. We no longer have the luxury of not rising to the occasion. Our enemies have already discovered that it only takes a few loud voices to pass a resolution at a school board meeting, or shout someone down in a city council, or slander someone online. Many of you are in positions of leadership, and all of you have the power of your voices. Now is the time to spend your social capital. Each of us has our own spheres of influence, our social and professional circles, and of course also our local and state and federal representatives. Their doors are open. This is our Queen Esther moment. It is time to go to the king. On that horrific weekend in October, all of us were doom scrolling. But many of us were doom scrolling through the original doom scroll, the Torah. And when we got to the end of the Torah, we doom scrolled to the sequel, the Haftarah, where God says to Joshua the famous Hebrew words, Chazak ve'ematz, be strong and courageous. Today, I offer you the words of the God of our ancestors, which all of us need as we meet this moment. Chazak ve'ematz, be strong and courageous. Chazak ve'ematz, be strong and courageous enough to know what is worth defending. Be strong and courageous enough that you know when to enter that uncomfortable place. Be strong and courageous when you say what no one else has the guts to say. When you refuse to bow to tyrants. Be strong and courageous as you carry forth with you this ancient tradition that insists on the most uncomfortable truths and that carries with it the antidote to tyranny. Chazak ve'ematz, because of your courage, the people of Israel live. Am Yisrael Chai.
Wow. Going off script here, but we're going to have another panel on courageousness. And good afternoon. I'm honored on behalf of my family to present the ADL Daniel Pearl Award to Nasir Yassin. In a few moments, Imam Abdullah and Tepli will formally introduce our honoree. But before he does, I'd like to make a few remarks about my friend Danny and the purpose of this award. Danny and I attended the same elementary and middle schools. We spent a lot of time together, both in class and after school. I still fondly remember all the goofy, innocent kid things that we did, like our messy, wonky candle-making project, and trust me, you would not want to buy those candles. Danny had a gentle manner. He was super smart, but was low-key about it. He was funny and had an infectious laugh. It seemed like he always had a smile on his face. Although Danny and I went to different high schools and universities, I'm glad to say that we remained friends and kept tabs on each other over the years, especially through shared friends, when Danny's journalism took him abroad. After Danny's untimely and brutal death, murder, my family established the award to honor the memory of my childhood friend. More importantly, we established the award to foster, encourage, and recognize efforts to promote mutual understanding, appreciation, and respect in Islamic and Jewish communities for each other's shared values and differences. In keeping with Danny's journalistic mission, we resolved to honor those individuals and organizations who find the courage to cross parochial and cultural divides to report on often misperceived and sometimes completely unknown communities in the effort to explain and demystify Jews to Muslims and vice versa. For us, my family, the ADL was the natural and only possible home for the award. At its core, the ADL stands for securing justice and fair treatment for Jews and all citizens alike. The ADL values human rights and dignity. It uses truth to advance these values and to expose those bigots and fanatics of all stripes who oppose them. Promoting these values and pursuing truth was Danny's life mission. As a journalist, he was driven to tell the stories of the neglected and the misunderstood. Danny did this so successfully and was so widely admired by his peers and readers because of his essential gentleness, intelligence, and curiosity, and because of his love for others. These qualities were in Danny's DNA, shaped no doubt by his Jewish upbringing, and they were present when I first met him in grade school. These qualities made Danny what he was, a humanist. And now I'd like to call upon Imam Abdullah Antepli to present the ADL Daniel Pearl Award.
Good afternoon, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Oh, somebody's teaching Arabic here. It is a distinct pleasure and honor to be here as the recipient of the Daniel Pearl Award last year to introduce my now friend, Nuseir Yassin, who will be receiving this award. And I think the word and the joke in the street is ADL gave the award to me last year so they can lower the bar and give it to Nas Daily. But I think even if ADL didn't lower the bar, Nuseir Yassin is well deserving of this incredible award. Nuseir, Israeli-Palestinian, Israeli-American, recipient of the Daniel Pearl Award, rose to fame by doing the crazy, insane task of making 1,000 videos in 1,000 days. Now he is focused on building Nas Company, the community company. They make video content, craft incredible experiences, and build powerful technology tools for community builders around the world by reaching over 300 million people every month. He has transformed the way people connect both online and offline. And if you haven't read his statement, his hyphenated multiple identities as Israeli Arab, Israeli Palestinian, in response to the heinous, barbaric October 7 act, I highly encourage you to Google and read that statement. It's an act of courage and an act of moral courage for him to speak in that level of moral clarity. Indeed, he deserves those applauses. And what he does by reaching out to 300 million people is quite remarkable. When many of us, including myself, in such intellectually lazy fashion, complain about the harms and damages of online, social media, this and that, when we are complaining about the darkness, this incredible young man and brilliant mind, he is lighting a candle by teaching us how to use these online tools, social media tools, by focusing and zooming onto differences around the world and turning these differences as sources of inspiration, enlightenment, and learning. Now, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Nuseir Yassin, Nas Daily, to receive this award.
Seven assassinations. 7 assassinations. In the Middle East, 7 leaders, prime ministers, and presidents were assassinated since 1948. Did you know that? My whole life, I thought leaders were killed because they wanted war, because they wanted destruction, because they wanted chaos. Oh, I was so wrong. I did more research, and this is a true story, and I found out that 6 out of the 7 leaders were assassinated because they wanted peace. 6 out of 7 because they wanted to end war. 3 in Lebanon, 1 in Egypt, 1 in Jordan, 1 in Israel. My whole life, I thought peace, coexistence, and tolerance is the popular thing. It's the right thing. It's the easy thing. But I was so wrong. It's not popular to want peace. In fact, it's very risky. In the Middle East, the first person to die is the person that wants us, Jews and Muslims, to live together in peace. And the first person to be glorified is the one that wants revenge, justice, and war. This is not just my opinion. This is data from the last 75 years. When I discovered this, honestly, I was depressed. What happened to coexistence, and what do we do now? That's why today I came all the way here to New York, not to address you, the 3,000 Americans who are sitting in front of me today, No, you guys are great. I came here to address the person watching this on the internet, the person in their bed on YouTube late at night alone watching this in Sudan, in Pakistan, in Ukraine, Russia, Israel, and Palestine. I am dedicating this speech to them. I call them the peacemakers. The peacemakers. The ones who are fighting for tolerance, for coexistence, for long-term peace. If my data is right, and if my hunch is right, and it is right, then these peacemakers are now feeling a lot of stuff. They're feeling sadness, despair, but most likely, they are feeling lonely. Why wouldn't they be? They're surrounded by war and people who are calling for death, especially in the last 5 months. Whenever there is conflict, peacemakers feel lonely. I know this feeling because I felt it too. I want to share with you my story, how lonely I felt, and I want to share with you what keeps me going. I hope it helps. My name is Nusair Yassin. I was born and raised in Israel as a Palestinian. This is a background I do not recommend on my worst enemy. Israeli citizen, but Palestinian origin, you are born a controversy. Part of me wishes I was born in Denmark instead, with blonde hair and blue eyes, like you, and you. But I wasn't. I was born in northern Israel with this face. And ever since I was a kid in the village, I was confronted since day one with conflict and hatred. Everyone around me who spoke Hebrew hated the Arabs. Everyone who spoke Arabic hated the Jews. But that did not make sense. I never believed in hate. I always believed in peace, tolerance, and coexistence, even as a child. I think I got these crazy, controversial ideas from my dad. So thank you, Dad. 15 years later, I came to the United States with the same ideas and started Nas Daily, one of the largest social media companies with tens of millions of followers and a strong team of 100. I ran it for 8 years under one mission: bring people together. That's it. After all, Nas in the beautiful Arabic language means people. Everything we do, touch, or say must bring people together. That is our only rule. From content to education to technology, we only bring people together. And then October 7th happened. The world changed. Everything became upside down. Bring people together? Get out of here. It's time to get justice. It's time to kill or be killed. It's not the time for together. It's time to destroy the other, especially if they're Jewish or Palestinian. So I did what we always do: remind people that coexistence is the only solution. My Jewish partner Alex and I created a video to promote Jewish and Muslim tolerance and coexistence, to call for 2 states for 2 people, for peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians, who are equally indigenous, who are both here to stay. But that message, that exact message, is not popular. Remember the number I shared above? 6 assassinations. It is not popular to call for peace, whether you're a leader or a follower or a silly YouTuber, especially at times of war. And I felt that on my own skin. Immediately after our message, I lost a $1 million deal, I lost 10 friends, and created 10 million haters. That was the price I paid, and I was willing to pay it. And I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one paying the price. To the person watching this on the internet, through these cameras, the peacemakers, the ones who feel lonely today, you can relate because you pay a price too. Every time you speak up, someone tells you to shut up. Every time you think we shouldn't fight, someone tells you that we should. That's why there are so few of us. But something inside of you tells you to keep going. Something inside of me tells me to do that too. What is that thing? Why do we keep going when this stuff is so hard? Why don't we just chill at a beach in Mexico and do makeup videos and drink cocktails? Well, I think I found the answer. I think I know why. I've been studying the top 6 religions over the last few months, and this is a true story. And I think I found the answer in a religion I recently studied. It's all the way in India, in Hinduism. Hear me out. In Hinduism, they believe in the concept of dharma. They believe each one of us is born with a responsibility, a duty, an obligation to this world. If you are alive on this planet, you have a responsibility to do what you are born to do, no matter what. My dharma is to bring people together. The doctor's dharma is to heal people. Your dharma, the peacemaker, your dharma is to bring peace and work towards peace. This obligation is so important because you cannot avoid it, no matter how hard it gets. Here is an example. There was a Hindu priest sitting by the river. He saw a scorpion drown. A scorpion drown. He picked it up in order to save it. But then it stung him. So he dropped it back in the water. The scorpion started drowning again. So he picked it up again. And it stung him again and again. And he kept doing this again and again and again. Someone watching this from the sidelines said, "Priest, what the hell are you doing? Why do you keep saving the scorpion when it will only sting you?" The priest smiled and said, "The scorpion's dharma is to sting. That's what it's born to do. But my dharma as a human is to save. This is what I will continue to do." Do you get it? It's beautiful. As peacemakers, our dharma is to promote coexistence, fight antisemitism, fight hatred wherever we see it, even if we get stung, even if we get pushback, even if we lose $1 million deals. We must continue our work because that is our dharma. That is our obligation in this world. I'm not Hindu, but I believe in dharma. And I know Daniel Pearl did that too. The biggest example of this, the guy whose name is on this award, his obligation in this world was to bring people together. It was to tell the story of the other in faraway lands. It was to unite and humanize. He went where many of us are scared to go, to war zones. Unfortunately, he paid the ultimate price for his work. And I'm here today because of him, to continue his dharma and mine. Dear peacemakers, we all pay a price for speaking up. But if you notice, we have no option but to speak up. It doesn't mean we're not afraid. I am super afraid. To this very moment, right now, I am afraid. Every time I say the I word or the P word, Israel or Palestine, I get afraid. Courage does not mean you're not scared or afraid. Courage means you are scared. You know the price you're going to pay. You know the consequences of what you're going to do, but you're willing to do it anyway. You're willing to pay the price. That's the definition of courage. To the peacemakers, whether in Ukraine and Russia, Israel or Palestine, remember that the world is divided into two worlds. Short-term world, long-term world. In the short term, the world will make you pay a heavy price and feel lonely. But in the long term, the world will bend towards you. It will bend towards coexistence. I believe in that. Over the last 5 months, we've noticed a sharp rise in hate across the aisle. That 5 months, that is the short term. That is when we all feel lonely. But I'm still so optimistic that things will get better. Coexistence is inevitable. Because I am Israeli and Palestinian, I saw a glimpse of the future. I saw coexistence and lived it. I saw my Palestinian mother and father who hosted 30 Jewish people in their home like they are one big family. I saw my Jewish American friends in Ohio, the Jacobs family, who hosted me in their home 15 years ago. And because of them, I got into Harvard and came to America. That's the future I want to work towards. In the long term, we will wake up and thank the peacemakers, the ones watching this on their phone right now late at night, the ones feeling lonely today. Your work will pay off in the long term. That coexistence dinner you hosted, it will pay off. That peace camp you advocate for, it will pay off. That rational post you made on Twitter, I'm not sure anyone saw that because it's Twitter, so maybe that will not pay off. But I am confident that in the long term, our actions will pay off. We will have a lasting peace in the Middle East and around the world. We may feel lonely today, but tomorrow we will not. There are millions like us, 3,000 in this room, 30 million around the world. This is not the time to take a break. The time to act is now, when you feel the loneliest, most scared, most depressed. When you feel like you're about to break down, that's when you break through. A moment of breakdown is an opportunity for a breakthrough. So go on, host another dinner, give another speech, make another friend, post another tweet. Sorry, I'm screaming. For those that are still not convinced, I want to leave you with one last story. Also a true story. This time not from India, but from Japan. I went to Japan specifically to visit 2 cities. The only 2 cities in the world where nuclear weapons were used. Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The US dropped 2 nuclear weapons in 1945. And just like that, more than 200,000 people vanished. The 2 cities were wiped out. When I landed in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, I immediately started crying. The history is too heavy. The suffering is too great. That's why I expected to see a lot of angry Japanese people. People angry at America, angry at war. People who want revenge and justice. It only makes sense. If I was Japanese, and I'm being very honest, I may feel angry too. But here is what surprised me. I went around Hiroshima and Nagasaki looking for people who hate America, and I could not find any. Even nuclear attack survivors don't hate America. They don't hate because, according to them, peace does not flow from hate. And peace is what they want. 77 years later, today, Hiroshima and Nagasaki are fully rebuilt. They have skyscrapers, public transportation, world-class infrastructure. Japan is the 3rd largest economy in the world, with so many American businesses like Starbucks and McDonald's opening stores in Hiroshima. I saw young kids learning English at school with no hate for America or the past. And in those 2 cities, there is a museum to remember the past. You would expect the museum to be called the War Museum, the Tragedy Museum, the Anger Museum. But you know what they called it instead? The Hiroshima Peace Museum. We can't forget our past, but we can choose not to continue the past, the hate and the anger. If you still doubt peacemakers, then look at the US and Japan, look at Israel and Germany, look at how far nations can come in just 1 generation. Today, we still don't have peace between Ukraine and Russia, Israel and Palestine, Jews and Muslims, India and Pakistan. Today is the short run. But remember, if we continue our work, the long run is different. In the short run, we lose, we die, we get assassinated, we get lonely and afraid. But in the long run, I am convinced we win. We can end conflicts, we can end hate, and we can bring peace to this world. After all, this is what we are born to do. Thank you.
I can tell by the fact that you're on your feet that you're feeling as I am, which is full of gratitude. So I just want to take a moment to have a gratitude exercise, one of which is to be grateful to Nasir for his optimism, his dharma, and his clarion call to peacemakers. I also still feel incredibly grateful for Dara Horn, for making us feel uncomfortable in this moment and helping us recognize this Queen Esther moment. And I also want to be grateful for my friend Daniel Pearl. And in a moment of personal privilege, I was thanking Richard Moss backstage, who was his childhood friend. I knew Daniel in college. We were at Stanford together, and wow, I'm getting emotional. He was exactly that soft-spoken young man. He trained me to be a journalist. He trained me to be the news director at the radio station. He loved music. He was a wonderful spirit. And I know that the legacy of that award is such an important part of his memory, and it helps lift us up every year here at Never Is Now. It helps shine a light on people like Nasir, who we all find profoundly gratifying. Up next, well, I'll wipe away my tears, and I want to introduce Marc Rowan. Marc is the CEO of Apollo Global Management, who was a leader in the early days after October 7th, modeling a strong response to the concerns about anti-Semitism on campus at the University of Pennsylvania. Columnist and host of Call Me Back podcast, Dan Senor, will be talking with Marc about the challenges of public courage and how the response he helped spark at Penn has played out over time. I think about that moment, I'm sure we all do, and about how on many campuses there was a shock of silence, and that for some, that silence keeps reverberating. So it's important when leaders like Marc speak up. So please welcome at this moment, Marc Rowan and Dan Senor.
Good afternoon, Marc. Good to be with you.
Dan as well.
Marc, Juju said that what was most noteworthy to many was your very public engagement on a whole range of issues that are important to this community after October 7th. But I do not want to start with October 7th. I want to start with a few years before October 7th, when you and I first got to know each other, when you were working on a separate issue, although it's connected, which is the issue of anti-Semitism, how one defines anti-Semitism, the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, and all your work on that front. So let's start with that, and then we're going to get to where we are now. But why were you involved with that issue?
It seemed to me that having a definition of anti-Semitism was the thing we needed to do to start to combat anti-Semitism. Because I thought we were mostly in denial as a community about where anti-Semitism came from. It was always clear to me that there was anti-Semitism on the right. It was obvious, it was violent, it was also predictable, and we had lots of allies. What I struggled with, and what I think our community struggled with, was acknowledging the anti-Semitism on the left. And part of it was the couching of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism, and caught up in particular the university culture. And when I went to go visit politicians, and when I went to go visit university administrators, everyone kept saying, well, we have no standard. Well, guess what? We now have a standard. And I worked hard for that standard, and I do think that is part of the basis that we need to combat on a go-forward basis.
So fast forward, again, before I want to anchor this pre-October 7th, because you were zeroing in on a number of these issues before October 7th. About 6 months ago, so it was around Yom Kippur, you had focused in on issues related to some very hostile to Israel, hostile to the Jewish community efforts going on campuses. And I want to talk about that experience, but were you just identifying general, or I guess were you generally concerned about the stifling of viewpoint diversity generally at our elite cultural institutions, which is an issue that affects Jews, but it doesn't only affect Jews?
Look, I think we can say that I'll talk about Penn specifically, which I know. We can say that we have an anti-Semitism problem, and I do think there is anti-Semitism, but I don't think that is the totality of the problem. Because if it is anti-Semitism, we're fighting that battle mostly by ourselves. We're 2% of the population. I think we're actually fighting a slightly different battle. We're fighting a battle against illiberalism. We're fighting a battle against the lack of merit. We're fighting the battle against the oppressor versus oppressed, powerful versus powerless. And we find ourselves as Jews caught up in a bigger trend that is not just about us. When I see the kids out protesting on college campuses from the river to the sea, what river? What sea? Who lives between the river and the sea? How did they get there? No one knows. Mm-hmm. And I actually find that as hopeful and optimistic. I believe that what we're watching, in part, not in total, and I don't want to be Pollyannish about this, this is where the cool kids are. There is a progressive narrative, a narrative of oppressor, oppressed, powerful, that has taken over our college campuses. It rejects truth. It rejects facts. It evaluates everything in the context of victimhood. And so if we don't call the problem, if we don't actually call out the problem by its name, we're unlikely to correct it.
Okay, so then I want to fast forward to October 7th. You had been a trustee of a university for a number of years. You've been involved with, you mentioned Penn, you've been involved with Penn for a number of years, but you and your peer group had also been involved in a whole range of academic and I'd say very elite cultural institutions. October 7th, I'm sad to say, shocked me not only because of the barbarism that we watched unleashed on Israel on October 7th, but it also shocked me because I actually believed that it was so ghoulish and brutal and grotesque that finally the world would see. Mm-hmm. Finally, the outrage would be directed at those massacring Jews. And instead what we saw at many elite institutions in the West is the outrage actually wasn't directed at those who unleashed the massacre on the Jews. The outrage was directed at Jews for objecting to being massacred.
100%. That's exactly what we saw. But if you had spent your entire life as a university administrator with a world view that was couched in this oppressor, oppressed, powerful, powerless narrative, you have one thing, it's inconsistent with everything you've done for 20 years. Are you going to reevaluate, or are you going to double down? And what we saw was a doubling down. And I think it was so outrageous, and it so shocked the community, our community, that we finally got action. And it's not, I think my dharma, unfortunately, is to tell the truth, for better or worse. And Nasir, that's all I can say.
Yeah.
But I have to be honest, 27,000 University of Pennsylvania alums stepped forward and said that they were not going to fund the university so long as the current president and current chair were in office. And by the way, I went on TV and I actually publicly called for the resignation of the president and for the chair. And everyone kept saying, oh my God, that took so courage. I have to be honest with you, telling the truth feels great and you should all try it. It's really good. And unlike Nasir, who suffers from this, I know we're in the right place now. I walk on the street and yes, there are people who protest, but the vast majority of people just hug me and say thank you. And that's what you should all expect. We are fighting a fight where we're telling the truth. We're fighting against something that is absolutely and completely illogical, which does not mean it will not persist for a period of time, but we also have lots of allies. That's what this Penn process has taught me. Yes, 27,000 alums stood forward, but the professors, the department heads, the administrators, they stepped forward too. They are living in a culture where the leadership of these universities has determined a dominant narrative. The administration has carried out that dominant narrative, but faculty is not monolithic. If I just take Penn as an example, if you're a Wharton professor, you're interested in merit, academic excellence, and research. If you are an engineering professor, merit, academic excellence, and research. If you're in the med school, 70% of the professors at Penn are actually doctors in the hospital, academic excellence, merit, and research. If you're in the School of Arts and Sciences, liberal arts, not so much. But my point of this is if you think back to what's happened on these campuses, Larry Summers was fired essentially for pissing off the faculty. That taught a group of university administrators, presidents, you can't piss off your faculty. Guess what? We now have 2 presidents who have been forced to resign primarily as a result of their alumni. It is up to all of us to decide that we want to tell the truth, we want to get involved, we want to use the positions that we have to make our voices heard and not call for special treatment, to call for truth, to call for fairness, to call for no double standards, to call back for the role of merit. And we have lots of allies. We have to make them comfortable stepping forward, and that's what we've been doing.
So I think there were a number of people who believe after that congressional hearing that we all watched, that many of us were, shall we say, underwhelmed by in some of the responses by various university presidents. And then, since then, 2 university presidents have stepped down. And there's a sense like, okay, so there's change happening at the top, we're winning. Do you think we're winning?
I think it's totally uncertain. I think we have a chance. And I think we have a chance now to reverse the tide, but it will take a long time. We've watched this happen, and I do mean we, myself included. We watched this happen for 20 years. It is not going to turn around in a year. But we have a chance for it to start. University presidents, university administrators are on notice that alumni care about these issues, and they are not where these universities are from a narrative point of view.
Okay, but it does require moving down into the organizations. It's not just about the senior levels. I mean, there are cultural issues that go deep in the bureaucracies and the various levels of academia in these institutions. That's my point. I just don't think you...
I have a slightly different observation.
All right.
I believe that most of these, in academia, I believe most people are cowards. They want their job, they want their research dollars, they want their tenure track. And if the dominant narrative from the top changes, there will always be hardcore people who disagree, but I think it's okay for everyone not to agree. It's okay to have viewpoint diversity. It's okay to have this fight on campus. What's not okay is to have 99% in one direction. You come as a Jewish student, you come as a merit-oriented student to these campuses, and if 99% of the faculty believes one thing and does not support you, it's hard to have viewpoint diversity. It's hard to feel comfortable saying what you will. But we're not going to get everyone to agree, nor do I think we should. This is not about the elimination of opposing viewpoints. This is about rebalancing. what has become an extreme viewpoint.
Since October 7th, and I'm sure you've experienced this, I'm sure most people in this room have, you find yourself in a bunch of new WhatsApp groups. Everyone's in these WhatsApp groups, right? And the WhatsApp groups have kind of devolved into people just circulating in the WhatsApp group the latest outrage of the day. Can you believe what the New York Times said about this? Can you believe what happened at MIT last week? Can you believe the protest? I call it the can you believe WhatsApp groups. Everyone has them, right?
Raise your hand if you have.
Right, raise your hand. Come clean. There we go. See? You see? That's right. My name's Dan. I'm in a can you believe WhatsApp group. This is like you've got to. So if you could access every one of those can you believe WhatsApp groups and tell these people, instead of just being outraged about the latest annoying article or incident that you read about, you would tell them to do what?
I tell them to get involved. I mean, we don't yet understand our power as a community. We've been in denial, particularly with the anti-Semitism of the left, the anti-Semitism we see on our college campuses. We have been reluctant to call it out. We have yet to even turn our attention to fighting it. Imagine if we turned our attention to fighting it. I was at a dinner last night and I was reminded of the boards of the cultural institutions in some of our major cities. It's all us. Well, that's how we decided to spend our time over the past 20 years. It's time for us to spend our time on other things. Why would we support institutions that don't fundamentally have a viewpoint that is consistent with our own viewpoint? Why would we be silent? There is so much for this community to do. We have tolerated anti-Semitism. Like, I think of Apollo, we would not hire someone who was anti-black, anti-gay, anti-woman, anti-anything. Why would we hire someone who's anti-Semitic? Now multiply that by every law firm, every consulting firm, every bank, every responsible institution. Who wants to hire racists? We have not, as a community, made it expensive to be an anti-Semite. I think we need to make it expensive to be an anti-Semite. And I don't mean in terms of money. We have tolerated it. We don't want to offend.
Right.
We don't want to make a wave. Right. Okay, those days are over. So everyone in their outrage of the day WhatsApp group, whatever activity you're involved in, whatever board you're on, whatever school district you're involved in, just don't take it anymore. Have your say. We are really powerful as a community. We have lots of allies. We have yet to get started. And I'm fundamentally, like Nasir, incredibly optimistic.
Okay.
Everyone is off the sidelines. October 7th, if nothing else, it's awoken the community. Everyone wants to do something. Now let's channel the energy productively.
Two recent essays, one in The Atlantic by Franklin Ford that just came out called The End of a Jewish Golden Age. John Podhoretz had an excellent essay and commentary called They're Coming After Us. Both these essays and others like it. Dara had a fantastic piece in The Atlantic a month ago, really chronicling how we got here. But it's this notion of the end of a Jewish golden age, that we in America have lived a golden, flourishing, charmed life. And what we've witnessed in the last 4 to 5 months is a bookend, the other end of the bookend. That's over. Jews are not going to have the charmed life that we have had in America.
I just think this was the wake-up call. This is not, like, I'll give you a pen. I don't know exactly where it started, but from the time I was looking at it, Penn at one point was between 25 and 30% Jewish. Now, the best guess is it is sub 10%. Did we get stupider? I don't think we did. So we've been on this slippery slope for a long time, and we've done it in the name of diversity, in the name of other people having opportunity. Who doesn't want other people to have opportunity? Of course we do. But what we've allowed to happen is actually racism in reverse. We've allowed the judging of groups. And so October 7th just made it visible to everyone where we stood. I think this was evident beforehand. I think this has been a slippery slope. And I think there's no more sitting on the sidelines. We're all on notice. This is our time.
Okay, Marc, I want to talk about how you organize your life. okay? You're on the couch here, all right? So
I'll have to
figuratively and literally, right? I want to organize. I want to talk about how you, Marc Rowan, organize your life, because you are running one of the largest asset management firms in the world, something like $650 billion in assets, with thousands of employees, with offices all over the world. It's a pretty demanding job. You have 200 plus partners, not to mention all the employees, then side hobbies, you own restaurants.
I have a few things going on.
You got stuff going on. And therefore, whenever someone has a few things going on, they have a lot of constituencies, right? They have a lot of different people and points of view that they have to manage and be responsive to. I didn't tell you I was going to ask you this question, but as we're talking, I'm just genuinely curious. When you spoke up like you did in the fall, and then especially after October 7th, and you went on television to make the statement that you did, and you catalyzed this effort that had extraordinary results. In any of these range of constituencies, because I think there's a lot of people in this audience and who are watching this who aspire to be Marc Rowan, who aspire to have the kind of career trajectory that you have had. And they worry, like, am I sticking my neck out? Are people going to tell me, hey, just get back in your corner?
I'm going to jump ahead because I'm watching our clock and I know they're going to yell at us.
Clock, whatever. We can,
Look, this is all good. I have to be honest with you. I had no idea that this was going to be positive. This could have gone in any direction. From an Apollo employee point of view, agree with me, don't agree with me, I have to say they are proud that I took the stand I did. I have a number of Apollo partners here today. And not everyone agrees with everything I say, but by the way, that's true everywhere. The notion that we took a moral stand and stood up and just told the truth really resonated. I have lots of US pension funds, lots of teachers' pension funds, lots of government employee pension funds. We think of those entities as being associated with the progressive left. The notion that we took a moral stand has really resonated with these investors. Our largest investors are in the Middle East. I think of, like Nasir, the friends I have in the Middle East. You think of the risk to these kingdoms. The risk is extremism. The risk is political Islam. There's no love lost. They know what it's like to live in the neighborhood. I'll be candid. There's been no blowback from doing this. It's been fine. And I really, I'll come back to what I said, like, telling the truth is actually quite fun. You don't have to be north of 60 to do it either, because you just assume I'm old, so that's it. But no, it actually has given.
It's liberating.
It's very liberating to do. We're not saying anything illogical. We're interested in merit. We're interested in truth. We're interested in facts. We're not interested in a dialogue that views actions not in the context of right and wrong, not in the context of moral or immoral, but in the context of whether it's good for some group or the other group. That's not the America we lived in. The people we're fighting, they're the same people who are fighting 1619 versus 1776. They're fighting against having tests in schools. They're fighting against merit. They're fighting against anything that approaches facts or that would interfere with their narrative. The narrative at these institutions exists at the top. Why don't we ask, who are the 20 worst, or which are the 20 worst universities? Which are the 20 worst civic organizations? Which are the 20 worst philanthropies? Which students participated and led SJP, led in marches calling for the destruction of the Jewish people? There has been no price for being an anti-Semite. There should be a price for being an anti-Semite the way there is a price for being racist.
Okay, so I just want to wrap in saying, if there are many things you could have taken away from this brief conversation, but I hope two will be, everybody has busy lives. Marc certainly has a very busy life and has managed to fit in some extraordinary and high-impact activism and leadership into his life on behalf of this cause at a very important time. And secondly, his experience, I think, is a case study in cause and effect, that you can do something and stuff will happen. It won't always happen, but it will happen, and it will be high impact, and it'll have cascading effects. And it's a case study that we should all aspire to.
And it feels great.
And it feels great. Thanks. Thank you, Marc Rowan.
Great. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you to Marc and Dan, and I know you're sick of me, I'm sick of me. This is the last you'll see of me today, but I am going to wrap up with our last speaker, and I hope you'll sit tight. We have one final person today. You've seen him before, and he's wonderful, David Wolpe. Juju and I had to do rock, paper, scissors to see who got to introduce him, so we could thank him for all that Rabbi Wolpe has done, not just over his long career, but especially in the last 4 months. We are both among his biggest fans, and we encourage you all to sign up to receive his weekly words of wisdom called Impressions. I look forward to that ADL email every Thursday, and it really is food for spirituality and fortitude. Rabbi Wolpe will take us over the finish line in just a moment, and he's just going to speak for about 3 minutes. But first, I know that during day one, ADL and dozens of renowned experts and inspirational leaders have given you a lot to think about. And I want to thank everyone who joined us in person and online today. Give yourselves applause. I'm applauding you. Just a reminder that by being here, you have truly shown that you are a leader in fighting anti-Semitism and hate. So I'm going to nudge you just one last time to share with your network on social media or via an email or text group of yours, even just one idea or takeaway from the things that you're learning at Never Is Now. You will be showing leadership just by saying, I was here and this matters to me. And you know what? Why don't we all take action right now? I'm putting you on the spot. I'm not asking you to post or anything from the conference, but just to text our legislators to signal our support for what we talked about earlier with Deborah Lipstadt, the national strategy to counter anti-Semitism. This very simple act can be one more way that we're making a difference at Never Is Now today. I know most of you have been very good about putting away your phone and focusing on the speakers, but now let's just do the opposite for 1 second. Please take out your phone and text PLAN, that's P-L-A-N, to this number, 72572. By doing that, you are going to join the ADL in calling on your members of Congress to fully implement the national strategy to counter anti-Semitism. I will say it one more time, so we're a little sleepy. PLAN, you're going to text PLAN, P-L-A-N, to this number, 72572. You will get a link so you can fill it out and you can be connected directly to your congresspeople. It takes literally just a minute. I'm going to pause briefly so you can act. This is like silent prayer. I also want to say, unfortunately, we just had a technical glitch today, so you didn't hear from Bill Maher or Secretary Hillary Clinton. Both of them will be aired tomorrow. I hope some of you are coming back. All of you are coming back. I will be back in a new outfit and fortified. But it's an amazing day tomorrow. The lineup from speakers are just extraordinary. And make sure you check that out, and some are surprises. After we hear from Rabbi Wolpe, it's not too late to check in at the Advocacy Center to find more ways to connect with your members of Congress and to explore the Israeli art installation and ADL history display. And as I mentioned, tomorrow morning, there are breakout sessions at 8:30 a.m. There is coffee and delicious breakfast in our main hall starting at 7:30 a.m. so you can see each other and schmooze and network. And to get you started, and you certainly won't want to miss the closing main stage session at 11:30. It has more inspiring leaders in the fight against anti-Semitism and hate. Juju and I look forward to seeing you all then. Thank you. And now, drum roll, Rabbi David Wolpe. Thank you.
I want to make one quick plea and tell you one story. The plea is, I was the rabbi of a politically divided congregation, and it was not easy. And the way we stayed together was by recognizing that we had certain crucial interests in common and that we were all Jews. I understand that in a big organization like the ADL, there are going to be political differences. Don't lose the narrative. Stay together. Remember that fighting anti-Semitism is the job of every Jew, and we cannot afford to lose one of you. And now I want to close with the story that I've told many times after October 7th, and probably will tell many times more. As many of you know, the Jewish tradition does not talk a lot about the afterlife, but we do have a word for hell, and it is Gehenna. What you may not know is that Gehenna is a real place. It is the valley of Hinnom outside the walls of Jerusalem, where in ancient times Canaanites would sacrifice children. And that was so awful to the ancient Israelites that they called it Gehenna was hell. About 50 or 60 years ago, some archaeologists were excavating in Gehenna. And there they found the oldest bit of Torah that exists in the world, more than 500 years older than the Dead Sea Scrolls. From 586 BCE, from the destruction of the first temple, two rolled up silver amulets that you can still see in the Israel Museum in Israel. When they finally succeeded in unrolling the amulets, there was the oldest bit of Torah that we still have. And it read, Yevarechecha Hashem v'yishmerecha, Yair Hashem panav elecha v'yichuneka, Yisa Hashem panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God bless you and keep you. May God's countenance shine upon you and be gracious to you. May God be with you and give you peace. In other words, my friends, the oldest bit of Torah that we have in the world is a blessing of peace that was snatched from hell. That is what we have done for thousands of years. May we and Israel continue to do so forevermore. Thank you.